All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob Arcolone, or JRC. On the very first pitch video, I gave you my idea for the fifth Thor movie. That was more akin to like God of War or something like that. In this one, I wanted to do something a little different and offer my pitch for one of my absolute favorite Marvel characters, and that's Blade. He's a character who they promised to do justice to, but we still haven't gotten his movie. I mean, we got Wesley Snipes Blade back in Deadpool 3 before we got his own MCU solo movie. So while I'm still hopeful and excited for a Mahershala Ali Blade movie, I came up with my own TV show version back in college like 7 years ago. Even though the reputation for TV isn't great. Sorry, I'm trying to get my button on. I got my black shirt for Blade, but I can't even get my button on. This one would have to be more akin to the Netflix era, closest comparables, of course, being Daredevil or Punisher. Before we get into the story, let's talk about the look and the feel. I imagine very old school vibes, 90s to early 2000s feel, like The Matrix or Underworld, mixed with hip hop and soul infused soundtrack, sort of like Luke Cage. Grainy aesthetic, deep blacks, perfect red colors, mainly in the blood effects, which should be like super exaggerated and stylized, like Tarantino, Django Unchained sort of thing. The first season of the show would have 10 episodes. The main character, of course, is Eric Brooks, aka Blade. Let me just say in advance, these AI images are not perfect. It's taken like 2 or 3 hours to get all these. There's like 80 pictures that I gathered and typed up prompts for the AI generator. So they're not great, they're not perfect, but they'll get the job done. So you don't have to look at this the entire time. Although I'm looking at it right now. Without any further ado, let's dive into my pitch for Blade, the television series. So episode 1 of Blade is called The Daywalker. The episode opens with a fever dream, fragments of Blade's birth, screams, hospital lights, a mother in agony, a doctor's silhouette, then darkness. The baby's cry echoes as we cut to Blade jolting awake, drenched in sweat, haunted by nightmares that never end. He straps on his gear, his belt and his sword and stuff, and he moves through the city's underbelly, tracking the scent of blood. Blade has become a sort of legend amongst the undead, amongst vampires. People fear him. He's a hunter who's able to walk in sunlight, so that's where the name Daywalker comes from. So flashbacks will thread throughout his investigation, and throughout all of the episodes, we'll get more and more info on his backstory. But that starts as a boy, Eric Brooks. He was abused by his father, who blamed him for his mother's death. One night, Eric ran away and stumbled on an old man being attacked by gang members by the looks of it. When he tried to help, though, one of the assailants, turns out to be a vampire, bites Eric. The old man actually fights back, saving Eric and revealing himself as Jamal Afari, a vampire hunter. Jamal takes the boy in and nurses him through days of fever, and by the third day, it appears that Eric hasn't turned into a vampire because he's able to be in the sunlight. But it turns out he's stronger, faster. Jamal becomes Eric's mentor. He teaches him to fight, to think, to hate what he calls the savage breed of vampire. Jamal warns that pity for vampires would destroy Eric, and Eric listened a little too well. We see flashes of their bond, we see some of the training, and we briefly get a glimpse of Jamal's tragic end and Eric holding him. And this is before we discover a book, the Night Stalker's book, and it's filled with ancient symbols of vampire houses and warnings of a being called the Superior. Back in the present, Blade wakes from his memory on a city rooftop. He stares at the skyline, hungry, unsettled. He crosses paths with Hannibal King, an old ally turned private investigator. King has been following a string of killings that led to one suspect. Her name is Lamia. She's a vampire whose victims bear a strange sigil burned into their flesh, a symbol Blade recognizes from Jamal's book. Their reunion is tense. King is sarcastic but loyal, trying to pull Blade back towards the Night Stalkers, which is the team that he once fought beside. Blade refuses, saying he works better alone. King calls him out, essentially saying you're not avoiding them because of what they did, you're avoiding them because of what you are. Essentially hates himself, his own vampiristic existence. King's investigation reveals a vampire smuggling ring tied to Lamia's symbol. In the fight that follows, Blade decapitates a vampire whose dying whisper mentions the Superior. That night, Blade stares into the reflection of his sword. For a moment, he sees his own eyes flare red, the thirst pressing through his control. He injects himself with a serum, this glowing red serum, gasping as it burns through his veins. King insists that the next move is to regroup with the Night Stalkers. Blade refuses again, but King reminds him that Lamia's name has come up before. It's tied to his old mentor, so it's personal now. So this is where we close the episode. We're building up a couple of storylines here with Lamia and this mysterious superior vampire, and Blade returning to his old allies, the Night Stalkers. So let's get into episode 2. So episode 2 is of course called The Night Stalkers. Blade's pursuit of Lamia brings him face to face with his old team, the Night Stalkers. We learn why he left the Night Stalkers through fragmented memories and a few tense reunions. Hideout is half workshop, half bunker, a mix of weapons and relics from centuries-long wars against vampires and new technology. As Blade enters, the room freezes. Rachel Van Helsing glares at him. Hannibal King stays silent, and Quincy Harker's wheelchair creaks as he turns. Frank Drake, ever the Joker, breaks the tension. So right off the bat, we have our little archetypes and dynamics. They don't really trust Blade at this point, not after what happened before, what they had to do, so alluding to something there. Details begin to surface. Quincy, half scarred, half blind from a vampire attack years ago, channels his vengeance into making silver weapons and bullets. His mind is sharp, though his body failed him, and he's in a wheelchair now. Somewhere behind his eyes, you could tell there's something broken to him, a grief for something that he lost. That Blade's tension with Hannibal King deepens. Their old rhythm is gone. They were sort of like a duo, but now they're not. Drake is there to provide levity, masking his own self-doubt, especially around Rachel, who he's kind of got a thing for. Rachel is the one that keeps them focused. She's precise. She's cool-headed. So Blade pulls out Jamal's book, and the team quiets. The sigil in the pages matches the symbol that King found, and the glyph Lamia branded on her victims. For the first time in years, they share a common goal and purpose, finding Lamia before she leads them to something worse, the superior vampire. They prepare to move out, but Blade resists working as a unit. He argues that he's better off alone, though it's clear that he fears more than failure. He fears losing control. The serum keeps his thirst at bay, but only for hours at a time. The others notice the way his eyes flash red when he's cornered. Quincy reminds Blade that Lamia's trail is cold and the Night Stalkers have the resources to find her. Reluctantly, Blade agrees. Their hunt resumes, the first uneasy alliance since Jamal's death. By night's end, they've traced a lead to a vampire shipment arriving at the docks, where the sigil appears again, now branded into coffins bound for the city's underworld. Episode 3 is called The Shadows. Blade and the Night Stalkers follow Lamia's trail into the city's underworld, and the hunt leads them to Saya Blood, a vampire quite unlike the others. She's intelligent, she practices self-control, she seems like one of the good guys, though she's tied to Lamia's inner circle. Throughout the investigation, small glimpses of Blade's fractured memory begin to surface again. The hospital, Jamal's training, and the night he lost control after his master's death. These memories sort of blend with the present, showing how Jamal's lessons and his prejudices shaped the man that Blade has become now. The Night Stalkers track Lamia's influence through a series of attacks, each bearing the same sigil, the Superior's mark. They discover that Lamia is more than a predator, she's a link in a larger chain. As Blade and Saya cross paths, a spark sort of forms between them. She's not the monster he expects, and that sort of unsettles him. Jamal's old words about vampires echo in his head, conflicting with what he sees in her. We learn little pieces of Blade's recent history, his time in a psychiatric hospital after a battle with Lilith, another vampire, when the Night Stalkers had committed him for losing control. That still lingers in how they treat him, especially Hannibal King, who doubts Blade's stability and his judgment about Saya Blood. There's a sense that each member of the Night Stalkers carries their own reason for being there, their own loss. By the episode's end, the mention of the Superior becomes more frequent, whispered amongst all the vampires that they hunt. Saya vanishes before Blade can learn her full connection to Lamia. Blade insists she's different, but the others don't believe him. Their trust begins to splinter just as the truth about the coming enemy starts to take shape. Alright, episode 4 is called The Master. The episode begins with the past fully taking over. For the first time, we see Blade's history in sequence, uninterrupted, how Eric Brooks became the Daywalker. The story returns to his teenage years. After running away from his abusive father, Eric encounters Jamal after being attacked by vampires. When one bites Eric, Jamal kills the creatures and brings the boy to his home. Over days of fever and delirium, Eric survives, stronger, faster, more alive than ever. Jamal, who had been meditating and grappling with the terrible fact that he might have to kill the boy, is surprised when Eric is touched by sunlight and nothing happens. He realizes what he's become, something new. Their bond forms through training and philosophy. Jamal teaches Eric about vampires, how to kill them with stakes, silver, or sunlight, how to turn his anger into discipline. Eric questions Jamal's hatred for vampires, wondering if any of them could be redeemed. Jamal shuts that down, though, insisting all vampires are monsters, even Eric. He's just a different type of monster, which is not really the kind of lessons that you want to instill in a son figure. Sometimes it takes a monster to destroy the rest. These early lessons define Blade's worldview for years to come. So the training intensifies. Eric learns to fight, but channel his rage into precision. He's told to use the pain of his mother's death as fuel, but when he's finally ready for his first mission, everything collapses. They infiltrate a vampire den looking for information on a figure known as Lamia. I see this as a callback to the original Blade movie taking place in a vampire nightclub. Eric fights fiercely but spares his enemies. That mercy becomes their downfall, just as Jamal predicted. The vampires return, attacking when they least expect it, and Jamal is bitten. Jamal, dying and refusing to turn, begs Eric to end it. Eric hesitates but eventually does what must be done. So Jamal dies in his arms and in his final moments drops a strange key. Eric uses the key to unlock a sealed door inside of Jamal's house and discovers an armory, weapons, relics, and of course the book of the Night Stalker. Inside it, he finds prophecies about the Superior. From here, the timeline merges back into the present. Blade keeps that book close, using it as a guide through every mission. Now, while reading it in the Night Stalker's base, the last page stops him cold, a line mentioning the Count and the mark identical to Lamia's seal. Meanwhile, we see glimpses of Lamia reporting to her unseen master, speaking reverently to the figure who commands her. In the final moments, Saya locates Lamia's whereabouts. The team prepares for the confrontation. Blade faces Lamia and defeats her, demanding the truth about the Superior. She laughs as she dies, warning that no one is worthy to look upon the Count. As Lamia turns to ash, a shadow falls across the room. A figure steps forward, ancient, calm, and impossibly powerful. Dracula has arrived. So episode 5 is called The Superior. Saya finds Blade after the devastating battle with Dracula. He's broken, his neck snapped, body limp. She actually is able to reset his neck and bring him back to life, sort of. The Night Stalkers then recover him. Quincy takes a sample of Blade's blood to analyze for damage. They notice a specific gene sequence that explains his daywalking ability. Quincy, Key, and King take particular note of it. Quincy sort of sets it aside, labeling it Montesi. The team gathers to regroup. Jamal's book has been right all along. The Superior is Count Dracula, an immortal being over 2,000 years old. Blade briefs them, his voice detached, almost mechanical. Throughout the episode, we get hints of this connection between Blade and Saya Blood. Their alliance feels uneasy but charged. The first flicker of empathy Blade has ever really shown a vampire. Meanwhile, within the group, tension grows. Hannibal King's distrust of Saya, Rachel's quiet study of her, Frank's attempt to lighten the mood even though it's really grim, and Quincy's withdrawn silence that hides his private grief for something that he's lost, which we will get to. The Night Stalkers begin planning to destroy Dracula. They know they're in a war beyond their reach. Episode 6, The Depths. The Night Stalkers track Dracula's operation and uncover his network of vampire assassins, an elite force moving in secrecy beneath the city. Amid their hunt, Blade and Saya's relationship deepens. Their mission together reveals enslaved vampires, beings forced into service rather than being just evil by choice. This challenges everything Blade has believed since Jamal's teachings. His hatred just begins to fracture, and he just doesn't even know what to think at this point. He questions his master's lessons and the notion that all vampires are soulless, evil creatures. The guilt over Jamal's death resurfaces, mixed with his own growing confusion about Saya. The two nearly get together before pulling apart. Blade refuses to cross a line that he just doesn't understand yet. The team sees the effect Saya is having on Blade, so King grows restless, Rachel cautious, and Quincy, he remains focused on his weapons, just choosing not to speak. And that was another short episode. I'm thinking, like, as I'm reading this, I'm realizing you could kind of combine certain things, so I would probably combine episodes 5 and 6 into one episode, just shorten, make it more economic. Episode 7 is The Vassals. Blade and Saya's connection culminates. They do the thing. They do the deed, unknowingly sealing a trust that may soon be broken. The truth about Dracula surfaces. He isn't actually the true superior. Plot twist. As he stands before an army of vampires, a double-bladed weapon bursts through his chest, pulled back into the hands of Deacon Frost. Frost introduces his own followers, the Vassals, and declares himself the new master. His presence exudes cruelty and control. The Night Stalker's world shatters again. In a shocking betrayal, it appears that Quincy Harker and Saya Blood are actually aligned with Deacon Frost. Blade realizes way too late that he's been led into a trap. Quincy, burdened by his past and driven by loss, hands over a box that Frost wanted in exchange for something or someone. The fight that follows just completely destroys the Night Stalkers. Frank Drake is killed. In a rage, Hannibal King battles through the Vassals while ordering Blade to finish it. Blade chases after Frost and Saya and Frost's brother Michael, but they all end up escaping. The episode just ends on chaos and disbelief, the team broken, and a brand new enemy to fight. Episode 8 is called The House of Blood. Deacon Frost returns to his lair, the cistern of the House of Blood, this underground temple thing, and he's with Saya, Quincy, and his brother Michael. There, Quincy delivers Deacon the vials of Blade's blood and his plans for the Montesi formula, named after a priest who created a spell that was designed to kill vampires, a spell that he learned from the Darkhold, actually, in the comic books. In exchange, Frost grants Quincy his wish, and he gets to see his daughter, Edith, who he long believed to be dead, killed by Lamia, but she's alive only in form. Edith is feral, feeding on carcasses, her humanity completely gone. The horror just destroys Quincy, and he basically allows his daughter to kill him under Frost's watchful gaze while Saya looks on in absolute disgust. Through Saya's perspective, we begin to understand Frost's history. He was not born a vampire, but created through unnatural means, a human transformed by chemicals and blood magic. He rose through the ranks of the House of Blood, mentored by Darren Blood, Saya's grandfather and Michael's father. Deacon challenged Darren for leadership, defeated him, and seized power. Meanwhile, Blade is driven purely by vengeance at this point. He struggles with the futility of his mission, thinking that every victory only births a new, darker, stronger enemy. Frost's twisted relationship with Saya becomes clearer. He's basically forcing her, manipulating her into a bond that echoes family but just reeks of control. And the episode ends with Blade finding and capturing Saya Blood in a storm of rage and betrayal. Episode 9 is called The Cistern. Saya recounts the full history of the House of Blood. Her father, Michael, was destined to lead, but Frost challenged tradition. He killed Darren Blood, her grandfather, and took control of the Vassals. Under Frost's rule, the house turned from a hidden order into a war machine. The mission: Blade needs to reach the cistern, the house's sacred heart. Saya refuses to reveal its location unless he promises her freedom, but he can't do that. The mistrust between the two just runs too deep. The Night Stalkers, fractured but not destroyed, are able to track Frost's movements through his chain of vampire-run nightclubs, the same ones marked with the House of Blood sigil. Blade raids one, echoing the original film's infamous club scene again, and also mirroring the night his mentor was killed, so it's a brutal reminder of his roots as a vampire hunter. Throughout, there's a sort of looming connection between all of the characters. Blade's blood, which is important for the Montesi formula. There's Frost's artificial becoming of a vampire. There's the lineage of Saya and the House of Blood. All of it is intertwined in a certain way for a certain purpose, which is either to destroy all vampires or to make them all unstoppable Daywalker vampires. And the episode closes with Saya finally revealing the way to the cistern, but only after realizing Frost intends to unleash something catastrophic. Alright, season finale. Episode 10 is called The Light. Final episode takes Blade and Saya into the cistern, the heart of the House of Blood. Entry is only possible for one of its own, so Saya goes first, trying to convince her father Michael to join them against Frost, but he refuses. During Frost's ritual, he exposes Saya's betrayal, or her attempted betrayal. He slices her hand and spills her blood onto the altar, severing her bond to the house and binding her to his control. Under Frost's command, she turns on Blade. Blade hesitates to fight her, holding back even as she attacks, but when he finally subdues her, Frost reveals the truth, that he is the one who killed Blade's mother. So Dracula revealed this similar information earlier in the season, but he was just lying. Frost fed on her first, using her death to create a hybrid child who would become his greatest enemy. And as far as I remember, this is comic accurate. Frost's arrogance basically seals his fate. Blade overcomes the rage that Frost instilled in him, breaking through both bloodline and curse. Their final battle is savage and personal, and Blade kills him, of course, ending the house's reign and scattering all of the vassals. In the aftermath, Michael Blood vows vengeance, and his real name is revealed in very cheesy fashion to be Michael Morbius, and he will shapeshift into Jared Leto. Also, Hannibal King steals the research that Quincy was doing on Blade's blood, the Montesi formula. This will be another important storyline going into the second season. The season closes on Blade standing amid ruins, the light of dawn reflecting off of his sword. For the first time, he isn't sure whether he's saved humanity or just postponed its fall. And that's season 1 of Blade. That is the show that I think Marvel should make. Not saying it's perfect or by any means, certainly things could be improved and changed and paced out differently. But that's, the story that I came up with. I thought it would be perfect for this pitch series that I'm doing, and so that's it. But before I close out the video, let's go over some ideas for what a possible season 2 could look like. Of course, Morbius would be the new villain. Not that Morbius. While Hannibal King, now twisted by the Montesi formula and artificially becoming a vampire, despite wanting to use the formula to destroy all vampires, becomes a sort of second adversary. King's secret experiments and his addiction to the serum lead to tragedy, forcing Blade to probably kill him. And why not? Let's throw Daredevil and Spider-Man cameos in there. It's my show. We could do it. We have the budget, unlimited budget. So that concludes my pitch for Blade, the TV series. I'm still looking forward to the movie if that ever happens. Obviously, probably doesn't have a place anywhere near Secret Wars or Doomsday, but after that we could get Blade and Ghost Rider and Midnight Suns and get things going again, for Marvel. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed writing the video and recording the video, and I will enjoy editing the video and uploading the video. And I will enjoy marketing the video on my Instagram, which will be in the description. And on X, I don't even use X, but I just hit the share button when I upload a video. So you could see that. You could see my X tweet thing. Anyway, I'll see you on the next one.